Velvet darkness quietly wrapped around the camp at Lunga when the messenger brought another crate from Henderson's cargo hold. On the crate, a neat tag, addressed to Sergeant Thomas Reeves, 132nd Infantry Regiment. For most soldiers here on Guadalcanal, such packages were a luxury. Usually they received canned food, bandages, or letters scented with home. But this crate was different, heavy, long, and strangely smooth, as if it belonged not to war but to some other world. Reeves ran his hand across the boards. "Well then, baby. Let's see if you were worth all the trouble," he muttered, pulling out a knife. The lid gave way. Inside, carefully wrapped in oiled paper, steel gleamed. And not just any steel, it was a Winchester Model 70, a civilian sporting rifle, as if it had just come off the shelf of a Chicago store. In the morning, the camp came alive with the noise of engines and roll calls, when Reeves burst into headquarters with the rifle in his hands. Major Dalton didn't even raise his head. "Report." "My rifle has arrived, sir." The sergeant placed the box on the desk. Now the major looked. Long. Very long. "So, this is a shiny toy for deer hunting?" He snorted. "You planning to hold shooting competitions in the jungle?" Two lieutenants chuckled quietly. Reeves wasn't offended. He had expected exactly that reaction. "Sir, the Model 70 shoots more accurately than any of our Springfields. And in reliability," he stroked the bolt. "It's better than people think. In Chicago, we hit a pot lid at 400 yards straight out of the box. The Garand doesn't reach that. With all due respect, you're comparing this..." The major jabbed his finger again. "This to the Garand, the best army rifle in the world. Sir, I'm comparing what brings results. Here in the jungle, accuracy is life." The major sighed. "Fine. But if it jams during an attack, you'll be writing home for another one. Sign the papers and get out." Later that evening, when the sun painted the jungle copper, Thomas sat on a log by his tent, oiling the bolt of his new rifle. His comrades stood nearby. "They shipped it to you by sea, huh?" Corporal O'Hara asked in surprise. "Brought it across the whole ocean?" "Yeah," Reeves grinned. "Bought it before we were deployed. Wanted to pick it up after training. But then Guadalcanal happened. So it traveled through San Diego, then to New Caledonia, and from there here." "Hope it was worth it," muttered the corporal. Reeves slid a cartridge in, worked the bolt, and seemed to listen to the quiet whisper of the mechanism. At dawn, the 132nd Regiment began moving to the forward positions, also known as the sector held by the Marines, who had been defending it for months. The road wound between scarred coconut palms, scorched by explosions, and damp hollows where mosquitoes droned menacingly. The Marines greeted them with dirty, weary, but steady eyes, men who had endured hellish Japanese assaults. "Welcome to our paradise, Army boys," one Marine said, waving toward the thickets. "If your sporting pop gun helps us survive even one more day, we're all for it." Reeves smiled. He pressed the Winchester to his chest, as if it were not cold metal, but an old, trusted friend. And somewhere inside he felt this rifle really would change much. Rain on Guadalcanal began suddenly, as if someone had flung open a heavenly floodgate. The tropical downpour lashed the foliage, helmets, and steel, turning every trail into sticky mire. Soldiers of the 132nd Regiment advanced in silence, cursing only when another patch of clay gave way beneath their boots. Sergeant Reeves walked at the rear of the squad, pressing the Winchester to his shoulder, as though afraid the damp air might bite a piece of steel away. He felt the water slowly seeping under his collar, the strap of his pack rubbing his shoulder, all of it creating the sensation of an endless marathon through swamps. But ahead, in the thickets, something entirely different awaited. When they reached the Marines' temporary fortifications, the world around seemed to freeze. Low shelters of logs and sandbags, a few hastily dug foxholes, and silence so dense it carried the sound of one's own breathing. Lieutenant Harris, young but already hollow-faced from lack of sleep, met them at the entrance. "The situation is simple," he said, while drops slid from the brim of his hat. "The Japanese have placed a sniper on Sioran Hill. The bastard works only on lone targets, always at dawn. He's already taken 3 Marines. Command wants to test your skills, Sergeant Reeves." Reeves nodded silently. He heard the key word test. "Think you can handle your toy?" one of the Marines asked with a sour grin. "If it doesn't fail me," Thomas replied, without lifting his eyes. "Well then, Hunter, let's see how you chase rabbits." Toward evening, the sky lightened a little. Trees dripped. The jungle whispered and chirped, as if returning to its ordinary life. Reeves and O'Hara prepared a position on the slope. A bit of camouflage. Carefully tamped earth. A sector marked out. "He's clever," O'Hara said quietly. "If he's left 3 corpses, he's no fool." "Clever is good," Reeves answered. "Such men rarely make stupid mistakes, which means you can guess what he'll do." He laid the Winchester on an improvised rest of roots. Cartridges were neatly arranged in a ration box cutout. The mechanism worked smoothly, obeying his every move. The stock, damp from humidity, suddenly felt cold and heavy. "You know, Tom," O'Hara began, "if that rifle saves you today, I swear I'll never call it a circus stick again. Better promise you'll buy one after the war." Reeves smirked. "For dear," O'Hara clapped him on the shoulder. "First let's survive Guadalcanal." Dawn came as expected, swift and alien. The sky flared pink above the line of the sea, and the jungle filled with mist, like the breath of a giant beast. Almost at once, a crack, sharp, abrupt. A bullet passed too close to mistake it for anything else. One of the Marines cursed. "He's in position," O'Hara whispered. Reeves pressed his cheek to the stock and drew a deeper breath. The foliage merged into a green chaos, glittering with drops of dew. Everything interfered mist, shifting light, his own heartbeat. Then, movement. So minute an ordinary glance would have missed it. But Reeves saw. A faint tremor among the branches on the opposite hill. Where a wet leaf should have hung still. It quivered. "There," he whispered. Finger on the trigger. Exhale. The sight froze, on a dark patch between leaves. The Winchester's shot sounded muffled, almost gentle, nothing like the thunderous crack of the Japanese Arisaka. A second. 2. Then a metallic clang, as if something heavy had fallen on stone. Silence shattered with the Marine's cries. Clear. He got him. O'Hara turned to Reeves, eyes wide with disbelief and awe. Reeves only nodded quietly, checking the chamber. "Told you, she's worth every dollar." But inside, behind the calm mask, he felt something else entirely. A mix of pride, relief, and a strange chill that comes after the first truly precise shot at a man. And this was only the beginning. After the dawn duel, when the mist finally cleared, the Marine camp slowly came back to life. Someone was repairing wet boots, someone sharpening a bayonet, someone whispering about rumors of a possible Japanese attack. But whenever Reeves walked past, conversations paused for a moment. He felt those looks, no longer mocking, but not admiring either. More like measuring, attentive. Marines were used to respecting men for deeds, not words. And he had done the deed. O'Hara clapped him on the shoulder as they passed the trenches. "Well, Tom, maybe now they'll let you into the card shack without checking your pockets. Then the game won't be fair anymore." Reeves smirked. In the command tent, Major Dalton was studying papers when Reeves was called in to report. Inside, it smelled of damp paper, oil, and something like soap that had long lost its scent. The major raised his eyes. "Our scouts confirmed. The target was eliminated. A clean shot. Distance about 400 yards. For the jungle, an impossible luxury." He paused for a moment. "Good work, Sergeant. And..." He glanced away from the map for a second. Perhaps I was too harsh about your rifle. Reeves nodded slightly, but inside he felt a quiet satisfaction. In the army, mistakes were rarely admitted, and from a major, almost never. Sir, the important thing is the job is done. Yes, but now, we have another problem. On the table lay a new sheet, a schematic map of the area. The major tapped a marked point with his pencil. The Japanese are active along the Matanbona River. There's a chance they're preparing an attack on our sector. We need an observer and a marksman to cover the route. Your squad goes there tomorrow. You go with them. Reeves exhaled briefly. He knew what that meant. A new position, new risks, and another night when no one would sleep. That evening, the Marines invited him to the fire, a gesture that meant a lot. One of them, Greener, handed him a tin mug of hot coffee. "To the precise shot, Army man," he said quietly. Reeves smiled. He raised the mug in reply and realized the atmosphere was already far less hostile. The Winchester now lay at his feet, wrapped in canvas. But every minute was filled with hope that it would serve only as a symbol of respect, not as an instrument of death. Yet war rarely leaves such hopes untouched. At the neighboring fire, someone said, "Tonight we heard noise from across the river. Sounded like someone sneaking along the trail." Another replied, "Come on, the jungle always makes noise." Greener shook his head. "No, that wasn't the jungle. That was people." O'Hara looked at Reeves. "Looks like we're in for a lively morning." The night was thick and sticky. The moon hid behind clouds, and the humidity was such that the air could be drunk. Sometimes the wind carried the smell of smoke, the Japanese burning undergrowth again to clear the sector. Reeves lay in his foxhole listening to the night sounds. Animals, rain, the rare echo of distant shots, and something else. Distant, barely perceptible. A rustle, silence, another rustle. O'Hara swore softly. "You hear it too?" "Yes." "Patrol?" "No." Reeves slowly rose onto his elbow. "It's closer." He took up his rifle, carefully checked the bolt. The wet leaves overhead did not stir. The camp breathed evenly, unaware of the threat. "Tom," O'Hara whispered, "tell me it's a raccoon, or at least a sea turtle." But Reeves no longer listened, his hearing caught every movement. Something was moving toward the positions. Fast, silent, and not like an animal. He inhaled and said, "Up." It's the Japanese. And the moment that divides the world into before and after had come. Darkness seemed to thicken around the camp, turning into a living, viscous creature reaching for every rustle. The sky ink black, without a single star. Only the faint stub of a fire near the far parapets lit the wet ground. The remaining sentry Marines sat, nodding drowsily, when the first sound cut through the night. A slap, barely audible, as if someone had dropped a wet leaf onto the ground. But Reeves was already on his feet. The Winchester raised, eyes wide. His heart beat softly, as though afraid to betray him. "Alert!" he whispered, grabbing O'Hara. "Up! They're here!" The word "they" was unnecessary. O'Hara already saw. A shadow, long, unnaturally bent, slid between two palms. The attack began without a shout the way the Japanese did it. Silent, almost reverent. Shadows moved across the ground like water, merging with the undergrowth. And then, one of them rose. A shot. Sharp, alien. The Marine at the machine gun collapsed, not even drawing breath. The camp erupted. "Contact! Contact! In sector north! Up! They're breaking through!" Reeves was already down behind the parapet, rifle raised, sighting a silhouette, thin, hunched, moving too fast. Half a second, and the Winchester fired. The metal slid back softly. The figure fell as if struck by a fist to the chest. Beside him, O'Hara hurled a grenade over a low palm in the air. It looked like a dull drop of light before the blast lit the surroundings. Now it was clear. There were many Japanese. Too many. Rain began suddenly, or perhaps it was only the feeling that the sky had joined the fight. Water poured down, drumming on helmets. The Marines' machine guns stuttered, beating back the attempts to break through. "Tom! Left!" O'Hara shouted. Reeves shifted position quickly, sliding over wet clay. He barely distinguished the silhouettes. The night's humidity blurred everything. But the Winchester never demanded perfect conditions. It was built to hit in spite of them. Reeves caught a shadow in his sights. Shot. Fall. He felt his whole body trembling, not from fear, but from absolute concentration. The world narrowed to the thin strip between front sight and target. But the Japanese kept coming. A guttural cry rang out a few meters away. 2 Japanese broke into the Marines' trench. One lunged at Greener with a bayonet, a long, ragged motion. Greener blocked, but slipped the ground, no longer held. "Greener!" Someone shouted. Reeves didn't hesitate. He sprang forward, leapt from the parapet, and smashed with the rifle butt. The blow was dull, hard. The Japanese fell. The second turned bayonet flashing in the dark. O'Hara threw himself forward, knocking the enemy to the ground. "Thanks," Greener gasped. "Save it for later," Reeves answered. "Now hold on." The battle lasted what felt like an eternity. The jungle roared, as if it too had become part of the fight. Bullets whistled. Leaves tore. The earth smoked from rain and powder. When the first rays of dawn lit the field, the Japanese began to withdraw. Quietly, almost invisibly, just as they had come. And then silence remained. Heavy, scorched. The Marines sat, catching their breath. Someone smoked, fingers trembling. Someone bandaged the wounded. Here and there, bodies lay, theirs and the enemy's. Reeves sank to one knee, clutching the Winchester. He looked at his hands, dirty, wet, scratched, and suddenly realized the trembling would not stop. "Hey, Tom!" O'Hara sat down beside him. "You all right?" "Fine. Just..." He exhaled. "Too close." O'Hara nodded. "This is Guadalcanal. Everything's close here." An hour later, Major Dalton came in person. "Rare. Good work, Sergeant. The squad held thanks to you and your..." He glanced at the Winchester. "Sporting miracle." He paused, as if weighing something. "Command has decided. You're assigned as marksman observer for Sector River. You'll be given a Marine patrol. And..." He nodded. "You'll be getting tasks more important than simple cover." O'Hara smirked. "Look at that, Tom. You're not just a hunter anymore. You're our sniper." But Reeves gazed farther toward the river, drowning in mist. There, beyond the wall of green, lay what awaited them next. And he felt, that night, the war had spoken its true name to him. Morning on Guadalcanal rarely brought relief. Even after a night of rain, the air remained thick, like a soup of moisture, grass, and rotting leaves. Mist hung over the river in a solid white wall, hiding everything that might lurk behind it, from birds to the enemy. Sergeant Reeves stood on the bank, resting the Winchester on his shoulder. Beside him were 5 Marines, tired but alert. Greener, O'Hara, and 3 new men from another unit. Lieutenant Harris unfolded a map, pinning it with his knee so it wouldn't blow into the water. "Sector River is unstable," he said. "Our patrols have heard movement at night. There's suspicion the Japanese are moving men along the river. Your task is to walk the eastern bank and find traces. Trails, footbridges, temporary camps, anything that shows they're gathering strength." He looked at Reeves, holding his gaze a moment longer than usual. "And we need your eye. If you see something, don't wait for orders." Reeves nodded. The orders were clear to everyone. If you see the enemy, kill. But inside he felt something strange. After the night's battle, after the screams, blood, and closeness of death, an unusual silence had settled within him, as if a piece of his soul had retreated deep inside, watching everything from afar. O'Hara clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on, Tom. The river won't scout itself." They moved along the bank slowly. Every step had to be weighed. Roots could be slippery, the trail camouflaged, and under any bush might lie a watcher with an Arisaka. Here the jungle was master, and men only temporary guests. Far away artillery rumbled like distant thunder. But here, by the river, all was quiet. Too quiet. "Don't like this," Greener muttered, staring at the thick brush. The Japs usually set traps, or at least leave signs. Reeves stopped and raised his hand signal to freeze. He dropped to one knee, pressed his eye to the Winchester's sight. Mist thickened over the water, but something betrayed the secret. A strip of grass pressed down in one direction. A bare footprint, faint but visible. A broken branch lying at an odd angle. They were here. "Recently," he said. "How long?" one Marine asked softly. Reeves scanned. The pressed grass hadn't lifted. The footprint wasn't washed by rain. An hour, maybe two. Much closer than we'd like. The Marines exchanged glances. Now the jungle seemed a different creature. Predatory. Watchful. Ready to strike. They continued. Soon the trail led to a bend in the river, where the water was calm, ink dark, and on the opposite bank, through the thick mist, something appeared that was too straight to be natural. Reeves crouched again, inhaled, raised the Winchester, and aimed. What he saw made him clench his teeth. God. Across the river, among the trees, lay a temporary Japanese camp, small but well organized. Bamboo frames, supply crates, neatly spread tarps. Figures moved among them no more than a dozen men. But more important was something else. 2 long crates. Painted dark. The shape unmistakable. O'Hara saw it too. "Are those Type 92 machine guns?" he breathed. "Yes," Reeves answered. "And looks like they're preparing to move them toward our positions." Cold spread through him despite the heat. Such machine guns could turn any defensive sector into hell, especially at night. One Marine asked, "What do we do? Open fire? We've caught them off guard." But Reeves shook his head. "There are more of them, and they're on their side of the river. If we start shooting, they'll flank us. We need something else." He pressed a finger to his lips, and suddenly felt that rising in his chest not fear, but an ancient, hunting instinct. The instinct that said, "Now the moment when one shot can change everything." He raised the Winchester. Through the whispering mist, the sight revealed a figure, a Japanese officer, seemingly directing the unloading of the heavy crates. Reeves didn't blink. Exhaled, finger on the trigger, and at that very instant, from the jungle to the right, came the crack of a branch. Loud, sharp, shattering concentration. "Tom!" "Right." Reeves spun. A shadow darted between 2 trees. A second later, another. Closer. "Ambush!" Greener yelled. The Japanese had been waiting for this moment. The mist exploded with gunfire. The river called back its black echo. And Reeves understood. They had been found before they could strike. Jack woke before dawn, before the morning mist began to slide down the hills of Guadalcanal like a giant white sheet covering the island. The night had been heavy. Humidity pressed on his chest. Mosquitoes tormented him. And somewhere far to the east, artillery thundered from time to time, brief flashes, like distant spring storms. Only instead of rain came death. He opened his eyes, listening. The island breathed with its rasping rhythm, the chirping of cicadas, the trickle of water in a ditch, the quiet rustle of palm leaves. But somewhere in that familiar noise was something else, the sense that the earth itself was waiting for a blow. Today they were to go into the jungle. By noon the company was ready. Tired faces, damp sleeves of fatigues, the smell of gun oil, moldy earth, and the inevitable fear the men tried not to show. Jack checked his Model 70 with particular care. It had become something more than just a tool. In it was confidence, reliability, a piece of home that had somehow found him on the other side of the world. Sergeant Dalton, tough and ruddy-haired, stepped toward him. "Still fussing over your lady?" He smirked, nodding at the rifle strapped in its black sling. "As long as she keeps saving my ass, yeah," Jack replied without malice. "Just make sure she doesn't let you down," the sergeant muttered and moved on. But Jack knew. If anything failed, it wouldn't be her. The march into the jungle began hard. The air was thick as steam from a kettle. Leaves whipped against faces. Roots hid poisonous insects beneath them. Every step demanded effort. Every sound demanded attention. The company moved slowly, trying not to make noise. As always, scouts went ahead. But the Japanese on Guadalcanal were masters of suddenness, as if they themselves became part of the thickets. Jack walked on the flank, covering the right side. His task was to listen to catch the crack of a branch, the rhythm of breathing, the faintest movement of shadows. The rifle rested in the crook of his arm, ready at any moment to rise, fire. "Save. Damn place," McNally whispered behind him. "How can anyone hear anything here?" Jack didn't answer. He had already heard something. To the left, farther down the slope among mangrove roots, something clicked, softly metallic, but faint. Too precise for an animal. Jack raised his hand. The company halted. He slowly lifted the rifle, peering into the green gloom. Then a flash, brief, yellow, and the crack of a shot. A bullet passed over their heads and slammed into a palm trunk behind them. "Ambush!" someone shouted. But Jack already saw the source of fire. And not just saw, he felt the distance. The height. The angle. The Model 70 pressed to his shoulder so smoothly it seemed to guide him where to aim. He exhaled. A light movement of the finger and the strike. The bullet vanished into the mist, and somewhere out there came the dull sound of a body falling. "Got one!" McNally shouted. But Jack didn't relax. If there was one, there would be more. The fight flared like a spark in dry grass. The Japanese fired short bursts, trying to flank the company. The jungle came alive, turning into chaos. Shadows became enemies. Leaves hid threats. The ground trembled with running men. Jack moved quickly, almost instinctively, shifting from tree to tree, choosing positions, choosing targets. His rifle fired rarely, but each shot was precise, like a surgeon's cut. The Model 70 showed its worth: smooth trigger, fluid bolt, steady fire. Even Sergeant Dalton, used to grumbling, shouted over his shoulder, "God damn it, Jack, keep it up." But suddenly, amid the roar of battle, something changed. Japanese fire began to recede. Their line faltered, as if a link in the chain had broken. "They're pulling back," someone cried. "Don't rush forward," Dalton ordered. "The jungle's their home, not ours." The company froze, breathing hard, drenched in sweat and mud. Jack stood leaning against a tree, feeling the rifle still vibrating in his hands after the shots. He looked at it and saw a thin stripe of dirt on the metal. His hand reached to wipe it away. He said softly, as if to a person, "Good work, girl." By evening, they reached a small clearing where they could catch their breath. The sun set behind the ridge, painting the jungle in fiery colors. He looked at the horizon, where mist and the gold of sunset blended into a strange, mesmerizing color. Guadalcanal was a cruel place, but here, amid the chaos of war, he had a purpose. And as long as he had his rifle, he had a chance. Tomorrow would be a new day. New jungle, new shadows, new trials. And he would meet them the same way, calm, precise, confident. Together with his lady, the Model 70. Night on Guadalcanal does not arrive, gradually it falls, like a curtain in a theater, with one sharp motion. The sun hangs for a second above the black crowns of the trees, and in the next instant, it is gone, yielding to viscous darkness, thick, almost tangible. For the soldiers of the 132nd Regiment, this darkness was not just a time of day, it was a trial. A true enemy. After the skirmish in the afternoon, the company was not withdrawn. The order came short. Remain. Observe. Prepare for enemy movement at night. Jack was not surprised. The Japanese favored night attacks. They were masters of stealth, like shadows born from the darkness itself. The company's position lay on a small rise. No trenches, no sandbags, only natural defenses. Thick banyan roots, uneven slopes, and tall grass. In the dark, all of it turned into a solid black mass. The soldiers sat in silence. Conversation had gone. Like wind before a storm, Jack sat a little apart from the others, leaning against the root of a huge tree. He checked his rifle slowly, almost meditatively, touching the metal with his fingers like a musician preparing his instrument before a performance. The Model 70 was astonishingly quiet. Even the bolt clicked so softly the sound was lost in the night. Sergeant Dalton approached him. "Our precious sniper," he rasped with a crooked grin. "The night is long. I want your eyes working as well as they do in daylight." "I'll try, Sergeant." "Don't try. Do," Dalton replied, and in his voice for the first time there was something like respect. He went back to the others, and Jack remained listening to the night forest. The night lived with its own voices. Somewhere a bird cried, piercing, like a knife on glass. In the bushes, something small rustled, perhaps a gecko. Leaves whispered, conversed among themselves, and it seemed from that whisper any threat might be born. But Jack waited for another sound. One that did not belong to nature, and he heard it. To the left, at the foot of the hill where the old trail began, someone stepped on a dry branch. Quiet, but not quiet enough for a man who had lived with a rifle in his hands since 16. Jack rose. The rifle was already in his hands. He signaled to McNally, who only nodded silently. Nothing was said to the sergeant, yet noise could not be raised. Jack slipped aside, descending the slope. Grass brushed his uniform, leaving cool, clinging traces. The trail was narrow, winding between tall bushes. Here the night's darkness seemed to thicken, turning into a living creature. And there he saw them, silhouettes. 5 figures, moving slowly up the trail. Shadows soundless, as if they did not touch the ground at all. They were Japanese soldiers. A patrol? Scouts? Or the vanguard of a night attack? Jack lay down, leaves chilled his cheek. He slowly raised the rifle. Distance about 40 yards. For the Model 70, easy work. He exhaled. The shadow in the center fell at once without a cry, without movement. "What?" he heard. A muffled voice. The figures froze. Jack was already reloading. Second shot, the one on the left dropped to his knees. Now they understood. Shouts. Hurried footsteps. Someone rushed down the trail. Now we can make noise, Jack thought. From the hill came the cries of Americans. "Contact! Left side! Dalton! Get the men up!" The next seconds turned into chaos. The light of a flare cut through the darkness, illuminating the trail in a cold red glow. Now Jack saw them clearly. 3 Japanese retreating, 2 falling, clutching their wounds. He fired 2 more shots, 1 miss, 1 hit. But the main thing was, he had ruined their night. The enemy had lost stealth. Now, they were no longer spirits of the jungle, just soldiers running back to their own. Sergeant Dalton ran up to Jack. "Was that you who started it?" "They were coming straight here, Sergeant." "Then, to hell with them. Hold the line." The night became dark again, the flare burned out, and for a moment the world seemed to vanish. Only breathing, only the pounding of hearts, and then silence, complete. The soldiers froze, waiting for another attack, but it never came. Half an hour later, Dalton said quietly, "They changed their minds. They didn't like your welcome." Jack wiped the sweat from his forehead. His hands trembled. The delayed realization always came cold. McNally whispered softly, "If it weren't for you, they would have crept right up to us." "Maybe," Jack replied. "But tonight they didn't." He looked at his Model 70. The metal gleamed faintly in the dark. "Thank you," he thought. The night dragged on, but the enemy did not return. The trail of spirits remained empty. And when a pale strip of dawn appeared on the horizon, Jack understood. Sometimes, one rifle and one attentive man can change the course of a night and save many lives. This story touched you as much as it touched us. Do us a favor, hit the like button. Every like helps YouTube show this story to more people. Click subscribe and turn on notifications. Every day, we rescue forgotten stories from dusty archives. Stories of marksmen who proved themselves with skill and courage. Real people. Real heroism. Leave a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in the USA? The UK? Canada? Australia? Our community stretches across the world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of preserving these memories. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for helping ensure John George does not vanish into silence. These men deserve remembrance, and it is you who help preserve it.